All right, I guess we got the first item, pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Play ball.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Go form.
We need to do a roll call, but I'm sure we do. Can we go ahead and do the roll call quickly?
From Pennsylvania, Mr. Tim McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. Chris Yakubowski. David Ross. City of Fredericksburg, Mr. Jason Brown.
Here.
Mr. Matthew Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Tim Baruti. From Stafford County, Ms. Monica Gary. Here. Ms. Crystal Lanuch. Representative from the Secretary of Transportation, Ms. Marcy Parker. From Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, Dr. Robert Schneider.
Present.
And yes, the roll call.
Can I make a correction? There's Pamela Young instead of Meg, and Monica Gary instead of Anuj.
No, I'm normally on this.
No.
Megan,
Normally?
Crystal, and I are all on this, but you're subbing for Meg today.
And Ms. Brown is here.
And Lori Hayes is for Dave.
Mr. Baruti.
So the alternate, sounds like the alternates are not on that list, so Pam Young
The alternate.
Lori Hayes are alternates, which
And we have
present, and we have
Mr. Brown as an alternate.
the vice
Yeah. The information was sent to you all.
assistant city managers, we have those three also.
All right, we good?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the information was sent ahead of time, so I'm sure that it's one of your papers that we have stuff. Okay.
Thank you. We do have a problem.
All right, let's move on. Okay, you want approval of the agenda? We have a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, any questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. Public hearing, do we have any signed up for public hearings?
So the public hearings for the UPWP, the Unified Work Program of FAMPO, that's basically what the staff do and what the staff spend the funds on. We have to have a public hearing and a 30-day public comment period. We're, I think, on day 28 of the 30-day public comment period. So we need to ask if there are anybody online or in the room, member of the public who wishes to comment. And then we have those comments which were received by email as public comments, which Coley will deal with there. Do you just want to read those quickly?
Yes. Darren Alleman said he'd like to express support for the focus on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. He'd also like to recommend replacing one parking spot or more on Caroline Street and installing dedicated bicycle parking. I should take up pedestrian space to lock my bike to a tree or sign. Robert Thomas said, as a city resident, I support anything that can be done to make it easier and safer to walk or bike in the city and with surrounding areas in Stafford. Right now, I'm trapped in a small area between Route 1 and Route 3. We also today received many comments from supporters of Joe Burrito, and mostly they were saying that they'd like to support the Fredericksburg area interconnector and trail network.
The outer connector and trail network.
He says interconnector.
He's going the one to Harrison Road down as opposed to out.
Thank you. Is that done?
Yes.
Okay, is there anybody online? Hearing none, is anybody in the audience who'd like to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Public involvement, this is for any other matter which the public wishes to comment on.
Is there anybody else online? Was there any comments?
There were comments, so a lot of them are in your packet. We had a great comment from Jane Lee, who's an advocate for the disabled community, and she has some great suggestions for all of you. There are also two other comments. Will McIntosh said, I think making downtown traffic light makes sense. Use smart traffic calming measures, return all streets to two ways, build curb bump-outs, perhaps even expose the old Belgian block to make it a place where cars, pedestrians, and bikes coexist more easily. I think a city like Fredericksburg can much more safely explore removing parking minimums and new development and trust builders to understand their market and its parking needs. And then Darren Alleman said, I don't think we need to encourage people to drive more, instead throw those savings on as tax credits or rebates on e-bikes to create better public transit. Driving a car is a privilege, not a right. the gas tax should be higher, making Princess Anne Street two-way and converting Fairline Street to be closed to cars between William and Charlotte Streets would be a good start.
The other comments were in your pack, so hopefully you've all read them and will have inwardly digested the content thereof. We won't read everything word for word.
Is there anybody online for general public comment? Hearing none. Was there anybody in the audience for general comment? Hearing none, we'll close public involvement.
The consent agenda is the committee meeting minutes.
Do we have an approval or a motion to approve the April 18th minutes?
Motion approved. Motion.
Do I have a second? Second. All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
That's fine, we'll record your abstention, thank you.
Yep.
You'll be pleased to know I've only got 7 slides for you tonight. I know it's a long agenda, so I didn't bother to bore you with long details about transportation, all which is very important. So, my administrative report for May, next slide. Looking basically at 3 key things that we need to know about the FAMPO travel demand model, the freight summit that we're working on with the FRA, that's the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, not the Federal Railroad Administration, and some sub-projects. Next slide. The travel demand model is the thing that creates these lovely maps that tell us where the congestion is now and tells us where the congestion is going to be in X number of years by modeling how the population's growing, how employment's growing, how many cars are going to be on the road, which roads they're going to be on, and how wide the road is, how much capacity there is on the road. And so we produce these maps, and the red shows you where it's going to be congested in X number of years. To do this model, VDOT actually purchased this model from FAMPO and some jurisdictions way back, I don't know when, and they maintain it. And maintain it, you have to update it, usually every 7 years. The policy has changed. It now has to be updated every 5 years. They've notified us that it's time because the last time this was done was in 2015. So it's due for an update, and the plan is to start this update in early FY23. That's July, August. FAMPO staff will need to participate. It takes about 18 months to complete, and we need to provide them with the socioeconomic data, as well as what improvements have happened to the highway network, the rail network, and the transit network. So we will be reaching out to the jurisdictions to say, please tell us what new developments have happened in your county or in the city of Fredericksburg since the last update, since 2015, because that has to get programmed into the model, and VDOT's modeling team at head office has hired a consultant that will start in July to do that work. Next slide.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
So you're saying it's going to be every 5 years,
Every
right?
5 years.
So when you decide to do it, next 5 years, for example, are you also forecasting for 5 after that? Just so that, or, you know what I mean?
So the model includes highway improvements that have already been built.
Okay.
It doesn't include highways that haven't yet been built. But when we do studies, you then add the planned highways into the model so that you can make a map like the previous slide to show you where the congestion is going to be. If you build all your improvements, there's still going to be some congestion. Where will that be? So then you add the future projects into that. But the basic model includes only things that have already been built. When you do a study, you add the ones that you anticipate building to give you an idea of the future. Okay. Freight Summit. We have a friend called Germana Community College, and they have offered to give us their venue for the Freight Summit for free, without any cost. And so we just want to thank them tonight. Their Fredericksburg Center for Advanced Technology in Central Park is going to be the venue for our summit, and we're very grateful for that. We just wanted to thank them. We've also selected Cambridge Systematics as the consultant for the project to do data analysis, to actually run the summit. They're bringing in an expert to facilitate the summit, and then to write a report which says, we heard from freight operators, this is what they experienced. We've heard from OIP and VDOT and all the role players as to what the data is telling them, and this is what we think should be done to help improve the freight network and the movement of freight in our region and through our region. And remember, that's about one of our official federal requirements and FAMPO goals to spur economic growth and economic development by looking at what the constraints on the freight network are. So that's the purpose of this study. We just want to let you know where we are with that. In your pack today is a task order to appoint our consultant, but Joanna has agreed to let us use their facility. We're very grateful for that. Next slide. Falmouth Bridge. I wanted to point this out because these are the projects in the 6-year improvement program that are in our region or in the Fredericksburg district that are slated for construction or delivery. The biggest one of those is the rehabilitation of this Falmouth Bridge over the Rappahannock on US 1, right? $60 million, just over $60 million has been allocated for the refurbishment and rehabilitation of that bridge, and that is included in this. Various years of funding have been allocated to that. There are some smaller projects which are also there. I'm putting VDOT a little bit on the spot, but you know, that's one of those kind of things I have to do now and again. We would like to, just get rid of that. We would like to ask, let me be the bad guy. I would like to ask the policy committee if we can request the VDOT engineering department, when they work on the engineering for the rehabilitation of that bridge, that they try to find a way to put some sort of multi-use park on that bridge at the same time. And they might not like me doing this, but I have to try to push for improvements, even if I'm pushing the envelope a little further than I'm supposed to. But the point is, we don't rebuild bridges every year, right? We're spending $60 million. We only get to rebuild these bridges once in, how many years? 30, 40, 50 years. So this is the one shot to do this. If we don't do that, then we got to try and get a whole nother project, a whole nother source of funding to try and put this on later. Why do I ask that? People cycle across that bridge regularly. I've seen them, and they're in the traffic. The sidewalk is very narrow. It's not a protected sidewalk. However, I know that there are engineering constraints. That bridge was never designed to have a sidewalk, to have a multi-use path that is wide. So I'm well aware of the constraints of the existing bridge and that it wasn't designed for that. So believe me, I'm not unaware of how difficult that might be, but I'm asking your kind of support as a group to say, can we request them to try, right, hard to fit that in, because we're not going to be able to do it again in 5 years' time. It's kind of the one to do it.
Marcy, do we need an endorsement of this from FAMPO, or?
No, I mean, we have to look at that when we do the project.
Okay, so you got it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
We understand there's a desire.
Yeah. Okay, so you all okay with that? We officially asked them. Great. Next slide. This bridge, there's always concerns about crossing the Rappahannock River and the access between Stafford and Spotsylvania and all that. The good news is that May the 17th is when? Tomorrow. Maybe the next day, but anyway, this week, the southbound bridges and the ancillary lanes that connect that will be fully open, apart from a little work that's still left around the Route 17 intersection and a little north of that. But the rest of that's going to be fully open this week, and we'll see, hopefully, the benefit of having 3 extra lanes on I-95 southbound and a bridge with 3 extra lanes in our area. Also remember, this is a separated traffic. So the intention of this bridge is to have the local traffic separated from the through traffic that goes to Richmond. So the idea is, theoretically, people from Stafford and Spotsy and the city should be able to get to each other without mixing with the heavy volume of through traffic that is going to Norfolk and South Carolina and everywhere else. We will see how well it works when it opens this week. Unfortunately, the northbound is going to take some time, another year-ish. But I must say that VDOT is ahead of schedule. This is not behind schedule, this is ahead of schedule. It's very likely that the second bridge is going to be completed before it was supposed to, which I think we're really grateful for. The HOV lanes, they're behind schedule because they found, should I say, detrimental soil conditions. and clay that wasn't expected, and so there's been a whole process of dealing with that. And so the HOV lanes further north from Stafford through to DC, it's going to be a while before those are finished. Next slide. This is my final slide. Construction for the station renovation is now slated to start in July. It's about a year behind when it was initially supposed to start, but the renovation of the Fredericksburg train station should start in July. Dr. Schneider, who's here tonight, has suggested that we do a one-off workshop on why congestion is so bad and run down a list of the remedies, past, current, and future, that are available to solve it. So we have a workshop here that we tag it onto the beginning of one of our FAMPO policy committee meetings, and we invite outside experts who specialize in researching congestion to just come and give us a briefing on what it is that causes congestion and what it is you can do about it. And there's a range of things you can do about it. Not all, some of them involve, some of them involve additional lanes on highways. Some of them, it may be related to adding rail capacity, transit capacity. Some of them may be related to where you build your new houses, all sorts of things. But I just needed to sound you out. And there's the question, is there interest from the committee to do this? Could I just stop and ask now before I go any further?
Yep.
Just 2 seconds. Yes, no, maybe?
Be great.
Anybody against?
I just have a question.
Yes.
The remedies, are the remedies sitting with us or with the?
No, the expert will come and give us, these are the things you can do about it, and this is how they work. It's information.
True, but I'm saying the remedies are not something that we can handle, right?
Well, in setting policy for our region, you are directing us as staff some of VDOT's work, some of DLPT's work, some of Fred Transit's work. You're giving advice and funding towards the solutions. So the point, I think Dr. Schneider should speak for himself, but I think the point he's making is it's better to be more informed about what's going to actually work the best before you allocate the money.
Yeah.
Should we give all the money to VDOT? Should we give it to Fred Transit? Should we give it to VRE? What should we do with the money? So when we make those choices, understanding a little bit about the causes and remedies of congestion.
So the only thing I would say is that why wouldn't we have already been doing this? Why do we need a workshop or something that this policy committee should already be doing?
It's additional information, Bob?
So my suggestion was, after last meeting was a very robust discussion. I don't believe you were here, my memory serves. So a lot of questions, and we also have new members. And so we also have new lanes, and we have new transit, and we have all these things that are happening in the region. But you also have historical land use patterns. You have things like rivers and military bases, and all of these things come together when much of it gets repeated, frustration session to session. So it was one of the things where, you know, I have a commission, and if my commission sat around the table and had that conversation, I would have said to my staff and asked the chair, we should probably hold a workshop to make sure everyone's on the same page and understands what the issues are. You're not going to solve it, but it's at least laying out what are some of the projects that are going on. We frequently walk into meetings and say, well, we need a study on. There's a study on the shelf that may have already been done, or there's traffic data that we're gathering. There's all sorts of different things that are occurring, and we have a tendency to just kind of forget about those and grind our teeth, and I could be just as guilty as anybody of it. But it's just pulling the different aspects of highways, transit, rail, your own land use and development policies, and making sense of that. So when you are an elected official or you sit on this policy board, you go, aha, that's why. And therefore, what are we going to do differently? And who needs to be at the table when we come up with a solution?
And that's great. Well, what I would like to know if there's an audit or something like that was already done a while ago that we could dust off and pass around before that meeting so that we can be more aware.
An audit of?
I'm guessing probably a prior study that maybe gave an overview in the last 5 years, or anything that would just give a perspective.
The answer is likely not.
There's nothing specific to our region that covers specifically the topic of congestion. The studies have tended to focus on what's wrong with this roadway or this corridor. but there isn't a broader, how do these pieces fit together that I'm aware of. VDOT may know something, but, I mean, certainly, the point is, do we or don't we want to have some outside experts give us some additional information? It might take an hour or 2 hours. It's a one-off. It's not a do this over and over and over again.
I'm good with that. I'm good with it. It's just that I'm thinking, as a new member, I would love to see a study that was already done, that we paid for, comprehensive. I'm more about comprehensive. I don't want to talk about one road or one lane or one Fredericksburg. It doesn't matter, that we need one then.
I mean, there's certainly some studies that have been done across the whole world, including all over the United States, about congestion. I can make those documents available to you, but they fall in different categories. Some are very academic, some are very focused on particular areas, particular roadways, particular corridors. So there's a whole range of studies. I could certainly put a package together for you to read.
And I'm not deliberating the point. I'm just saying that it sounds like that's what is needed, that a study, not just somebody coming to us and talking about it, but something that we could always go back, a plan that says, this is what we're looking forward to, and change it as time go on. If we don't have something like that, let's try to have something.
Can I suggest that we have this first and then decide how to proceed? Because part of the issue is the way we've always operated, and you can say good, bad, or indifferent, is every jurisdiction has been pretty much focused on certain areas, and everything has been focused on that. This is asking us, and I think Bob is correct, stepping back and looking at the big picture, because as we were talking about earlier here about the city, you change one little thing on one piece of road, and it cascades beyond that, and a lot of times we don't look at that impact. And this will get us started to have that conversation.
A good example would be, and this is just I'm not a VRE expert, but someone says, oh, let's triple rail capacity. Well, did you know that CSX owns the rail line, and you can't do that? So it's just like, what is the reality of, okay, what does it look like, but what are the plans in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and sure.
Put it on the calendar, on the days that work.
Thank you very much. Reminder, the election of the annual office bearer.
What's the next, who's it?
It would next be the city of Fredericksburg.
And then who's the vice chair, with Stafford, I guess?
The vice chair would be Stafford.
Okay.
Yeah. So that election happens at our next meeting in June before the recess in July. So just alerting you to prepare for that. So we will make those elections next time. Of course, all of our committees are doing the same thing. They're all going through the mid-year election cycle. We received a letter from one of our CTAC members. I just thought I should alert you to this, indicating their intention to remove the requirement for the chair to rotate between jurisdictions. At the moment, the CTAC has two options. You can either re-elect the existing chair for a further year, or it must rotate to the next jurisdiction. And the proposal is to remove the rotation option from the bylaws of the CTAC. The CTAC does not have to submit their bylaws to yourselves for approval under the current bylaws of FAMPO, right? There's no requirement that the CTAC must get your approval, but I just thought I should let you know that at least one member would like to change that, and there may be some support for that. We'll have to see at the meeting. You should just know about that. And then finally, and with this I'm done, the June Policy Committee meeting, just reminding you, it's going to be on the same night as the GWRC meeting, and that's because there is a public holiday that falls on the third Monday that we normally have our meeting on, so just be aware that that might be a long night for some. And with that, Mr. Chairman,
any comments or questions?
Just a quick comment, and again, we can't tell the CTAC what to do, but I've not been on an organization where there has not been a rotation to ensure that each jurisdiction has an opportunity to sit in the chair, and I would hope, I don't know if we want to say something to the CTAC about maintaining that rotation. I think there's been some discussion where, two cycles is fine, but after that, it really should shift to another jurisdiction. To take it off and not knowing what's going to be coming down the pike, what the issues are going to be, whatever else like that, I think is probably a little short-sighted, even though it's with a long-term impact we're not going to be looking at. So I don't know what my colleagues think, but I would suggest that we might want to tell the CTAC that we would not view it as a good idea.
So to that point, is it something maybe that we need to talk about as a change in the bylaws to ensure that all, committees, under the policy committee have a rotation or ensure a rotation. Because I agree, every locality should at some point sit in the chair seat. I don't think it's in the, best interest of regionalism to not rotate. So,
I guess I look at it, those are board members appointed essentially by us, and if they're sitting on the board, I think they're gonna vote. If they choose to do away with it, then I think that's their decision. We can always change it later, but,
It sounds like in that situation, a majority could just kind of keep that majority control though, so I do agree that may not function.
see, this is one of the, these are changing bylaws, is one of the biggest challenges we have on this board, between this and GRC, because, I have some issues with a couple, and I know Matt has some on some other issues, but we have not been able to change the bylaw in the 10 years I've been on here, so I'm not sure how we're gonna fix it.
Well, Mr. Chair, I have a quick question for the CTAC. I've never been to one of their meetings. They have active, robust participation. Is it easy to identify? Are there multiple people who could fill that role of chair, or does it tend to be just one person who's frequently, and that's why I ask, because sometimes that's what occurs, is you just don't have.
With all that, why don't we have them come brief the board in June and say, explain to us why they think this is a good idea, and then we, without directing them, we can at least give an opinion at that point.
I'm in your hands. It's not my role to tell either them or you.
I think I think it would be appropriate that we would like a presentation from them before they take an act. We would request.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good. All right, moving on. We got number 9, that's the Connecting Capital Region to Baltimore, Richmond. Rapid transit.
Thank you for having me. My name is Joe McAndrew. I'm the Vice President for Government Affairs and Infrastructure for Greater Washington Partnership, and we have a few friends in the room tonight, so good to see everybody. I'm just going to introduce who the partnership is and offer up our support to the cause and the effort that you guys have going on here. So a little bit about who we are and where we work. The Greater Washington Partnership works from Baltimore to Richmond. At that scale, we think that we can compete with just about anybody in the country and around the world. We're the 3rd largest economy in the U.S., 7th largest in the world. And we've got amazing assets from the federal government to our higher education institution to our population and skills and talent. Oftentimes, unfortunately, at that regional scale, I know we're working at a smaller metropolitan region here, but at the super regional scale, we don't necessarily get it right, and it creates challenges and friction points for us to be able to work as a region, straddling jurisdictions and straddling political cycles to get big things done. The Greater Washington Partnership is a civic alliance of the leading CEOs and employers stretching from Baltimore to Richmond. The group came together in 2016. Many of the CEOs were leading the private side discussion for the Olympic bid, for the 2024 Olympic bid, and when they lost the Olympic bid, as a region, they ultimately saw a need to continue the good work from the C-suite table, collaborating and working together across the super region to try to push the region forward around infrastructure, talent, and what we're defining as inclusive growth. We really do believe that, our region's diversity is our superpower. We've got an amazing, rich amount of talent and a great infrastructure system, sometimes a bottlenecks in certain areas of the region. But, we've got talent in this room and across agencies and on the private sector working together to do big things.
Once you advance the slide, it doesn't seem to be working.
There we go. It's a little murky. The group, it is a C-suite table comprising employers, many of which are from many different sectors, but collectively employing about 300,000 both public and nonprofit based employees stretching throughout the region. And they're working outside of their day-to-day profession. When they come to our table, we're a 501c3 nonpartisan entity, really trying to put the collective interests of the region forward around things, again, skills and talent, infrastructure, and inclusive growth. Next slide. There we go. Ian and I have worked together for a couple of years. Bob and I have worked together for a couple of years now. Why the Fredericksburg metro area? At the end of the day, when employers come to this region, they expect and want to have access to a broad and diverse range of talent. How you get that talent's really important, you know, whether it be a Boeing, an Amazon, or a CoStar. Where they locate is driven by the talent wars of the future, and having access to the talent is really important. There's a lot of talent in this region. As you guys know, 375,000 residents calling the Fredericksburg area home. There are challenges on the interstate. You all are solving it. There's great opportunity, on the rail side, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But, you know, you're sitting in the middle of it, and how do we ultimately think about not just getting people to come through, but to invest and stay a little while is really the opportunity. Next slide. On the infrastructure side, we've been working since 2017 to put together what we're calling a blueprint for regional mobility. You can find this at our website, but this is a bit of a roadmap here. We looked at everything from intercity rail to transit to roads and technology and the like. This was the first CEO-led transportation vision, so we say, for stretching the super region. But we've been working now since 2017 to try to implement it across things such as, not pertinent to this region necessarily, but, you know, solving WMATA's funding crisis in 2018, capital construction side, addressing the Transforming Rail and Virginia program, supporting the Commonwealth and their bold moves there. Next slide. A few others that I'll touch on real quick. I'll save the rail vision for last year. But, you know, we look for opportunities to partner and support. I think that's the most important thing. We're a nonprofit, business-led organization. We're not trying to come in and inform our public sector partners what to do. Rather, we're trying to support, lift up, encourage, nudge, and speed up and accelerate change. Because that's the name of the game. So when and where we can go and align our interests and align the interests of the advocates, the public sector, we're going to be more successful, we're going to do it faster, and we're going to get positive results. So one example is a recent study we did in the Richmond area in partnership with GRTC, DRBT, and others to look at a north-south alignment for the next Pulse bus rapid transit line, trying to help answer the question, where should it go, where's the demand, and what's the opportunity to make sure that it's done in a way that supports good land use, good economic development principles. Throughout the pandemic, we've been doing employer-centered COVID surveys, trying to figure out what employers are doing and when folks are coming back. I think, you know, the main takeaway here, as you can see, 68%. I think that is, at the super regional scale, what we're finding. On a given day, we're projecting about 60 to 70, 75% of employees in the office. Once we get to a new normal, new hybrid model, it's going to take hold. We'll see how long it plays out. And then, knowing you all have at times had active conversations on a regional transportation authority, we were helpful of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority's creation, working with the CTB member from there and the jurisdictions to think about what was the policy fix, supporting them when they went before the Assembly to get that done. Next slide. I think within this region, areas that we've really kind of worked in that I think we'll be collaborating and working with folks on is improving rail. There are undoubtedly needs on I-95 that we need to invest in, and the state and this region are investing in it, making strides to improve it, and look forward to taking southbound lanes tomorrow. But we've got a huge opportunity on the rail side. Virginia's made a massive move that no other state, I think, in this in the country has made on the Transforming Rail in Virginia investment in partnership with CSX and VRE to go ahead and get access to public right of way. This is an opportunity that we're taking and trying to knit this together with and better connect MARC and VRE rail services to the Northeast Corridor with Amtrak and running more trains south to Richmond as early as possible. You released the Capital Region Rail Vision, finished it up last year. Bob and Ian took part in the project team. But at the end of the day, I think, to the congestion question that just happened, there's only so much money that we can do on the asphalt side of the equation before you ultimately run out of solutions because the roads get congested. We need to think about other modes of transportation, especially for connecting employers, whether it be to here, to Richmond, or to DC. Transforming rail in Virginia deal is a huge one, where we're going to see a near hourly train service on the Amtrak line running through here at south and north within the next decade, and expanding VRT service both during the day running both directions, so folks can come here for meetings in the middle of the day and get back if they so choose, or come here in the nights and weekends, which is currently not possible. So it's a huge opportunity. We're working to go ahead and implement it and work it across the region, but it's really trying to go ahead and accelerate the pace of investment to expand service, but also look at ways to go ahead and expand trains beyond Union Station in DC, north and south. Next slide. On a VRE level, there's a huge opportunity here, I think, just to be able to run more trains here. But we think there's more opportunity for growth with VRE beyond where we're at. And I'm going to stop rambling because I know you guys are very busy. But one item in your deck or in your packet, if you guys are at all interested, I got tipped off over the weekend that Virginia Passenger Rail Authority and the Commonwealth are going to apply for a large federal grant to speed up and invest in Long Bridge's construction, which I'm glad to believe folks are aware of. It's the main bridge that passes over the Potomac River. It's a two-track bridge owned by CSX. The state with DC is looking to build another span with two tracks wholly owned by the public. And the state is applying for a $300 million federal grant as part of the mega grant application. The application's due soon, and they're asking for letters of support by the end of the day on Wednesday. Recognizing it's a little late, reached out to Ian. If you guys are interested, there's a letter here stating the support. At the end of the day, these are highly competitive projects, but any additional federal dollars means that Virginia can do more investing south away from the Long Bridge and speeding up the train movement to and through Fredericksburg. So I will stop. There's a lot there that I tried to cover, answer any questions about who we are and what we do. But at the end of the day, trying to introduce ourselves, because the way that we work is thought leadership, such as the Capital Region Rail Vision, the Beachfront, et cetera, convenings, supporting our public actors, joining summits, et cetera, and then advocating where the business voice is needed to push the ball forward. So I will stop.
Any questions on the general presentation?
I'm going to ask Ian this, because Ian and Bob are both this. What role does this play for us, or do you see the role of us fitting into this discussion or cooperating?
So one of the things that we can do right now is page 3 in your pack is just a letter supporting the funding to build the Long Bridge, which doubles the capacity of rail, all forms of rail, freight rail, passenger rail, and everything else into our region. But as the folks in DC are working on this whole region from Richmond to Baltimore, we're a piece of that puzzle. And so all of our rail projects that are on the go, the partnership is involved with trying to push for that extra bit that we can get. And so working with them over long periods of time, we can get these projects implemented. So we, as staff, have conversations with them already. This is the first chance for us to introduce some of the folks behind the organization so that you can get to meet them and find out if there are any ways we can cooperate.
My question would also be, and this is something I know the chairman has been very interested in over the years talking about, is bringing jobs and better jobs to this region. So that is a role you could potentially have some assistance with.
we are not an economic development organization, but we gladly support our partners' activities in that space.
So I was looking at some of who your board members are, and it's quite impressive.
Yeah, but, so we don't actively participate in we are actively encouraging others throughout the country to move to this region, on a regular basis. The vice president recently joined an event, with us, and regardless of party, you know, highlighted there's a $4.7 billion investment that the board and strategic partners are making over the next 5 years, in what's defined as inclusive growth, supplier diversity investments, inclusive growth such as, you know, closing the racial wealth gap, et cetera, and then investments in CDFI and NDI, capital investment programs. But that $4.7 billion is stretched throughout this entire region. You know, we can take that quote from her and run around the country and tell all of our partners that should be invested here. On the Amazon, we spoke, you know, a few of our board members spoke directly to Amazon during that search process about the opportunities if they come here, what they're going to be able to do and see. I think where it's appropriate, we'd love to participate and support the cause.
And the point is the FRA here in our region has asked me certainly, and some of us, to support reverse commuting trains and weekend trains in order to spur economic growth by making more workers, staff, labor available to businesses in the area. And this is one of the things and projects that they're pushing. So while it's not, hey, we're going to specifically target your economic growth, I think what they're saying is we will help by looking at these infrastructure things which facilitate the economic growth by helping bring jobs to the area through transportation.
Well, I can tell you as a VRE Ops board member, we are definitely talking about reverse commute, right? Basically changing the whole concept of what that organization will be in the future.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Do we have a motion on the letter to endorse Stafford?
You want to jump down there?
Well, that is the question.
The letter is not a separate item, it's part of this presentation.
I didn't get it.
I beg your pardon. It's in your pack in front of you, page 3. Unfortunately, I only got it this morning. I don't normally add anything to the agenda at the last minute, but this is not a controversial letter, so I felt that the jurisdictions wouldn't be overly upset if I added it. Would you be okay with it?
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the letter, endorsing the letter? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Next item.
Thank you, sir. Carrie? Smart scale round 5.
Give a brief update. So, next slide. As you know, we're in May. VDOT is working very hard. We're working very hard to get our pre-applications turned into full applications. Next slide.
Okay.
So what you need to know is the TAC has just endorsed these 4 projects for all of you for your endorsement. So the VCR Regional Project, I-95 8-lane widening, US 1 bicycle and ped improvements, and US 1 multimodal and roadway improvements at Mount Pine and Station Road. Those are the 4 that TAC has passed up to you for your endorsement. Would you, Mr. Chair, like me to go through those, or should we move to the motion?
I would move to the motion, but, so, does anybody have any questions or discussions about those? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. The next item, Jordan is on leave, so if you'll allow me, I'll just do this presentation on our CMAQ and STGB allocations. We printed out a copy of the actual allocations for you in the list, but I know it's a lot to deal with. Could you click on the presentation? There. This one here. Thank you. Okay, next slide. This is what we did. You'll remember we asked each jurisdiction to give us one project this year. We did a narrow cast request for projects. We had a screening call. We ranked those applications. Staff discussed the needs related to projects with STGB funds. We created a set of CMAQ, STGB, and HIP allocations, which was presented at the March TAC meeting. Next slide. We received feedback from VDOT relating to the budget, project costs, and previous year's funds. What in fact happened was VDOT, and we're grateful, was able to show us that they had allocated additional funding this cycle for us, which we hadn't expected, so that was great. We then provided a proposal at the April TAC meeting for CMAC to fully fund the requested new projects, to fully fund the sponsor of any new transit and leased commuter parking spaces, to fully fund the VCR Trail Bridge, to partially fund the Fred 3 bus purchase replacement, and that of course can reoccur in our next round, and we could provide additional funding, so it's not fully funded. Next slide. For the HIP funding, there was the amount to close out the long-range transportation plan, the $30,000, which you know about for the freight summit, and additional funding to Arnville Road, Route 1, and Exit 126 improvements, as well as the Garrisonville Road widening. Next slide. The TAC endorsed the final product, which you have in front of you after 2 full rounds. We showed you the previous version of it last meeting. This is the revised allocation after the TAC has worked with VDOT and us as FAMPO staff to revise it. We are asking you tonight to approve that list of projects and those allocations, because it needs to go for CTB approval in June. So that's where we are in that process. We are going to now create a project history and documentation to keep track of our projects, because staff change, processes change, but the projects sometimes go over 10 years in our system of getting funding each year. And we need to keep track of those changes, because at the moment it's run out of one spreadsheet. So we're going to create a proper history for our projects so that we know where we move money to projects, and when we took money off of projects, what the history is, so we have the institutional memory. We're going to do that over the summer. Staff are going to do that. And then we're starting the cycle all over again in September, because we did not allocate this round the FY28, I believe, money. We kept it for the September call for projects, and then we will get new funding in January, February, March next year from VDOT. So we will have a substantially larger, I can't give you the exact number because we don't know yet, but a substantially larger amount of funding for new projects. And we're encouraging the jurisdictions to plan now. Get your project cost. Do the maps you need to do for the project. Get all the preparation work done, so that when you say, give us your bigger projects because we have additional funding, please provide those to us. But that's where we are now. I think that's the last slide, am I right? So, Mr. Chair, I'll take any questions, and you have the full list printed out as well. If you've got the whole pack with all the, we moved $5 here, we moved $5 there. You've got the whole history in your pack that was emailed to you.
Does anybody have any questions on what was presented in the packet?
I have a question on,
Yes, ma'am.
is the $75,000 study for Garrisonville?
Yes.
It started with $200,000. What happened to?
So the target was $200,000, not the allocation. So the allocation was $75,000. It's an old project allocation, even occurred before I was at FAMPO. The only thing we've done this year is we've asked the county to take over that project rather than FAMPO staff, because it's been sitting there for quite some time. The county has agreed to take over that project. It's a study, and the county is free to run that study however they wish. We will participate as staff, we will assist, and we do need to ask the county to get on with the project. But the $75,000 was allocated historically. At that time, the guesstimate of how much the project was going to cost was that it might cost up to $200,000. But that was several years ago. It was an estimate that folks made at the time. The $75,000 was what was allocated, and it's available now to spend. It's not future money.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve 22-34.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, I'll move resolution 2235. We kind of touched on what we're doing with that, so I don't know if we need to go into a big presentation.
Okay.
Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have any discussion on the motion and the second? All those in favor of 22-35? Any opposed? Any abstain?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The UPWP, Becky, do you want to just do a very brief update? We had the public hearing just now. You'll recall at the beginning of this meeting, the public comment period closes in 2 days, and the executive of this body will meet on the 23rd of May at 5:45 p.m. in this room to approve it on your behalf, as you agreed at the last FAMPO Policy Committee meeting. But just in case anybody has any questions about the final version of the document, Becky's just going to give you highlights, and then we'll take any questions so that the executive has confidence to approve this thing on your behalf next week.
Very good. Highlights are the 2022 Freight Summit, the FRED Transit Strategic Plan, the FAMPO Vision Plan, the East-West Mobility Study, and the VCR Trail Study. We also took out 2 projects that were in the FY21 UPWP. One was the project we just spoke about, the Route 610 operational study, and the GW Ride Connect strategic transit plan. The reason they were taken out of the UPWP is those funds don't run through our books. We'll participate as stakeholders, but it's not part of our actual funding program to sign invoices and so forth. We had great input from VDOT to add the major points of the infrastructure bill that will be addressed and the staff impact on those new guidelines accordingly. Also, we made a comment to acknowledge that there would be staff work needed for an annual update to the constrained long-range plan as requested. That way it kind of seals the deal that would be a one-time effort as requested and not continual updates over time. We also added the staff effort on the impact of the census on the urbanized area and the efforts to amend that metropolitan planning area as related to the updated census information and adjust regional funding prioritization methods accordingly. Also, to work with localities to identify locations for transit-oriented development is another new initiative in the UPWP. That concludes my summary.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much. So, everybody, assuming if you have no questions, you'll be happy for the executive to approve this, subject to any public comment we get in the next 2 days. Everybody clear where we're going? Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then we have the TIP update. Again, Jordan is on leave today, so I'll take care of those. There are only 2. The first request was from DRPT, and these are adjustments after the release of the draft TIP. No formal action is required by FAMPO as there are largely administrative changes. The other one is a request from Fed Regional Transit to adjust the FY23 and 22 funding for the strategic plan. Again, it's moving money with, it's like moving deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not new money, or you're not being requested to approve anything. It's a request to adjust the TIP to allow them to continue with the regular funding streams that they've been working
So
on.
you're talking about Titanic, it's a disaster?
No, it's not a disaster. It means that you can move the chairs left or right, it doesn't make the outcome any difference. I don't for a second believe that.
Let's go QE2, whatever.
Yes, spread is a disaster. Maybe moving the deck chairs on the QE2 would have been a better example, pardon me. Is that okay? Great. So, just notifying you of those amendments. We don't require any action from the policy committee. Next item is G.
Okay, this is a resolution 22-36, appointing Cindy Lamb as at-large member to the CTAC.
Yes, I actually requested that. Ms. Lamb was, we've had some good experiences. I just took over her seat. She was very helpful in many things in my transitioning. However, I'm a little concerned with the other point that we spoke about earlier with the changes in the way CTAC may be operating. and the way that the suggestion for her to serve came about. So I would like to withdraw that if possible, if not to defer this, because we need to understand the implications of what's happening with that before I would do that.
How about we table this till the next meeting?
Okay.
Okay.
June.
Was it June?
We're in May now, so.
Yeah, well, it's a May 23rd meeting. That's executive. Okay.
Now, can I withdraw it, or is it just a suggestion to table it?
Well,
Is it possible for me to do that?
you can withdraw it, or we can
I'd like
table
to
it.
just withdraw it. I feel like this has not gone in a way that I feel is transparent, and so we can just have that discussion, figure this out later, but for now, I'm gonna withdraw it.
Okay, we'll withdraw.
Let me ask you a question. This is Robert's rules. Can we just do that?
So if a person who asks for the item to be put on the agenda asks for it to be removed, I believe it's acceptable to remove it from the agenda.
All right. Next item, resolution 22-37.
This is, the performance targets. You know that we accept as FAMPO the, state target for, our region. The TBB, or the transportation, board equivalent of us in Washington, D.C., also have to set their targets, and they don't just accept the state targets, they set specific targets for congestion mitigation and air quality. What we do every year is that we have a look at their targets and we send a letter of endorsement or recommendation of those targets, usually, simply because the reason we're involved is because of the TMA in Stafford County. That is part of the Greater Washington urbanized area. You know about the TMA, the Transportation Management Area. Because the Transportation Management Area of DC is within the FAMPO jurisdiction, they send us their targets to see if we have any comment or to see if we're prepared to support those targets. It's been a tradition in the past, it's not a rule, but it's been a tradition that we don't particularly pick apart their congestion targets because we don't really understand the whole of the Washington, D.C. metro area, and it's very difficult for us to know whether those are great targets or not so great targets. So what's traditionally happened is we've just sent a generalized letter saying, yes, we support your targets. And we don't typically try to say, no, actually, you should change your target by 0.1 because we wouldn't have any idea whether that would have unforeseen consequences. So we put it in the pack. We received the letter again this year and the request. We don't foresee a staff making any detailed comments on their congestion targets because we have such a small portion of the DC metro area that it becomes difficult for us to make those kind of detailed comments. And they're asking for us just to send a letter of endorsement. It doesn't mean that we have any financial loss or gain as a result of that. We're just endorsing their congestion targets, basically. That's the letter and the resolution which is in there. We're asking the FAMPO Policy Committee to agree to that endorsement of the targets set by the Washington, D.C. MPA.
Any comments or questions about this?
The targets are pretty much set by federal, state, everybody else's regulations, or their meeting goals and stuff set, so this is it's not them going off and doing their own thing, it's they've got specific.
Oh, yeah, you have to fulfill a whole list of criteria. We choose to not go down this path, which is a lot of work to set our own targets. We just accept the statewide targets, which gets us around having to do a ton of work to set all of our own targets. They actually set their own targets, but they go into the detail of what all those criteria mean, what the requirements are, and they try to come up with something a little more detailed.
Seeing that there are some discussions ongoing on our goals with some of our northern jurisdictions, I'm going to show what good neighbors we are and move resolution 2237.
Do we have a second? From Stafford or Pennsylvania?
Second.
Then we've got two.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right.
The next item is support for the Spotsylvania Raise Grant application. Again, as you know, this is a particular project that's linked to the VA clinic, and we've just been asked to provide a letter of support for the funding application. I think you all know about the VA clinic. I don't need to tell you all about the history of it.
Rather not.
As staff, we have no objection. We think that we should support the Spotsylvania request for the letter.
Any discussion, any questions?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did you hear that, Mr.
I
Chair?
did, I liked it.
Spirit of regionalism.
Move the support.
All right, any discussion, any questions?
Question. Do we exactly know, when I hear VA, all the details that are involved when we say yes? Because I know what we're paying for right now.
Say that again, sorry?
I just need to know when we're talking about VA, exactly what are the details, so we have a detail on what it is that they're.
Okay, I'll comment. We are not providing the funding for this particular project. It's a raised grant, which means it's, I think, Marty, it's federal, or is it federal and state funds, the raised grant? Federal, yeah. So it's federal funds, and FAMPO is not competing with Spotsylvania to get the money. It's not our local money that they're asking for. Spotsylvania is applying for federal funds to fund road projects to allow the ease of transportation movements around the new VA clinic in Spotsylvania. We're just being asked to provide a letter of support to say, yes, please give them the funds to build it. So it's not money of FAMPO, and the money's not coming to FAMPO. It's just it's like an honorary letter saying, yes, we think this is a good idea. That's all it is.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Okay.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, vision survey, we're trying to just develop a vision for FAMPO, and Coley is just going to walk you through this. It's just a 9-question survey to just ask you to give us your input so that we as staff don't create the vision for you. We want to do it with all the members of the 4 FAMPO committees. And so we have the survey. Coley, do you just want to go through the 4 slides? It's really quick. It's just 4 slides.
Exactly, yeah. We are just requesting that you fill out the survey. The idea is that FAMPO will create a future vision statement based on all of your responses to the future that FAMPO intends to achieve. So we will be requesting you to complete the survey by Tuesday, May 31st. And after each committee has received and completed the survey, we'll compile the data to present to you at the next meeting. And then we will take into consideration the results and create a draft vision statement document.
You will get an individual email. So Matt Kelly will get an email, dear Matt Kelly, here's the link, please will you complete the survey, but it is anonymous. We're giving you a number, so you can just fill in your number, and number 135 is who you are, and I won't even know who you are if you complete the survey. Coley is the only person who will have access.
It'll be able to figure out.
Yeah.
I will not pass any assertions on anyone. It's an anonymous survey. We just want your input so that we understand what the members of the 4 FAMPO committees, including the BPAC, the CTAC, and the TAC, and yourselves think about what FAMPO should be doing and about what the vision of FAMPO should be. Really simple. If you could complete that and send it back as Coley has just asked. Thank you.
All right, any correspondence?
We have 2 items, I think. Coley, do you just want to list those, or Becky?
Sure. We received some great feedback from Jane Lee's, once again, about some audible signals that are needed in Spotsylvania County. So that should be.
The CTAC, just to point out, has taken some action on this. They have read through your comments, and they've sent letters to jurisdictions and VDOT and so on to request consideration for accommodations for disabled folks, such as audible signals, when new road projects are put together. And they've also suggested and started to draft for us some amendments to the long-range transportation plan, which pays a little bit more attention to the needs of the disabled communities. And we will consider those when we do an annual update to the LRTP. So those comments, there's already some solution, some work towards a solution, I think, by the CTAC, and we should thank them for that work. Was there any other comment?
No.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, do you have any staff reports?
I don't think we have anything new to report at this time.
All right, any board comments?
Just two quick points, getting back to why we were being so nice to our northern friends. Meg and I serve on the VRE Ops Board, and we're on a committee now that's reviewing the bylaws of VRE, and hopefully we're not going to tinker with the bylaws too much. But the question really is FAMPO, you have NBTC and PRTC that kind of are the two pilot organizations. NBTC is truly a transit organization from the standpoint of planning in their areas. PRTC has pretty much become more focused on the transit component and bus service and not so much. And some of you have served with me on this board and on VRE. Kind of like FAMPO's an afterthought. Oh yeah, there's FAMPO. Oh yeah, there's FAMPO. So part of the discussion also is that when it comes to VRE, most of the ridership, and it's growing, is going to be more southern. So we are going to be representing the major ridership as time goes on. So there's ongoing discussions to ensure that FAMPO is represented on the executive board, because right now, there's two issues for me anyway. One is the executive board should represent a majority of the ridership, which is not necessarily always the case. And then two, that we have somebody on the executive board. That's moving forward. We got a bunch of stuff today. We're going to talk about it again on Friday. But one of the things that was brought up by my Northern Virginia colleagues, we had Paul Milday and we had Gary Skinner, because those two guys loved VRE and everything else like that, and they jumped in on everything. So one of the things that Meg and I have said is we, FAMPO, realize how important VRE is to our region, and we will become more active and maybe come back here as a board before appointments are made at the executive level for VRE and maybe say, okay, FAMPO, which ones should be or should we put forward to serve on the executive committee of VRE. That's all still kind of outstanding. Coming kind of out of that discussion, and which came out of totally left field, VPRA has now gotten in touch and said, hey, we might have an opening on the VPRA board, and maybe we should potentially look at somebody from the FAMPO region. And it came kind of fast and furious. So I did talk I was with Meg at the time anyway, so we chatted about it. Bowen Richwine Jr. of Stafford likes rail. He's corporate, former Marine, leadership trained, and everything else like that. So we have asked him to submit his name. And again, no guarantees have been given. That was just, hey, we hear what you guys are saying. Yes, you're a growing region. Maybe we should be looking at something here. That comes from the bureaucratic side, not from the elected side. Obviously, the governor decides anything and everything. But there seems to be an interest in putting somebody on the VPRA board that represents this region, and that's being worked on, and as more information becomes available, and I apologize for not getting hold of everybody, but this kind of happened soon after, and it was like, hey, can you give us some names? What? And I did try to make some of the rounds, and as you notice, I'm not talking about a city resident, I'm talking about, same thing at VRE, I'll tell you now, I know sometimes I get this view of I'm all about the city. I have never served in an executive position on the VRE Ops Board, because I feel we're only 2% of the ridership, that if anybody serves on the VRE Ops Board, it should be the bigger players. And as we move forward in this discussion, it should be Stafford or Spotsylvania representative, because you guys represent the majority ridership. And when this came up, it was kind of the same thing. Give us somebody who represents one of the bigger jurisdictions. And it just turned out the person we were able to find in a very short period of time to put forward was a Stafford resident. So that's potentially moving forward at this time.
Sorry, when you say you went to find, it, did you send something out to them?
No. This was a request, and I had, basically the time frame was you have like 48 hours to give us a name.
It takes 2 seconds to send an email.
Well, it's in. And it cannot be an elected official or anybody related to the rail company or anything else like that, so it's loads of fun.
Or staff.
Yep, or staff.
All right. Any other discussion on that or questions? Any other board comments? Seeing none, I think we can motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.